This is a Dynamite Network podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Marvelous Joe.
And I'm his twin brother, Johnny DC.
And in this episode, we're going to find out who would win in a fight between the Superman villain, Metallo, and the Thor/Iron Man villain, Radioactive Man. Now, they're both characters who emit radiation, and that is pretty much it.
I'm trying to think of what to add, and there really isn't anything to.
It's a radioactivity type match. Of course, we're doing this in lead up to our team duel that's coming out in a few weeks, where we pit the Legion of Doom versus the Masters of Evil, and Radioactive Man has been a prominent member of the Masters of Evil in many of its incarnations. Before we get into that fight, we're going to break down the latest comic book movie news to come out this past week, of which we just have one news item, and that is the Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2 official trailer and release date.
As always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic.
Our artificially intelligent duel simulator, AJ9K, has a quick message for our listeners, so listen up.
Why, hello there. Do you love listening and chatting about Marvel and DC? Then become a part of the Dynamic Duel community on Patreon, where you can choose from 3 tiers. The Dynamic 2.0 tier lets you listen to this podcast without ads and gives you access to its Discord chat group where you can chat with Johnny DC and Marvelous Joe. The Fantastic 4 tier gives you that and more with 2 bonus episodes each month, including bloopers and top 10 shows where Johnny and Joe count down your favourite Marvel and DC subjects. The X-Force tier makes you an executive producer of Dynamic Duel, where every month you help the host choose what to review and who to fight against each other. And finally, the Dynamite Podcast Network tier allows aspiring podcasters to create their own battle-focused show using this Monte Carlo simulator. Johnny and Joe will help you develop your show, provide graphic support and consultation, and get you simulation results to announce on your show. Pitch the twins your show via email at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by reaching out to them on social media. Check it out at patreon.com/dynamicduel. Pip pip cheerio.
Thanks, AJ9K, and thanks to everyone who supports the podcast, including Miggy Matanguihan, whose birthday was this past week. Happy birthday, Miggy.
Happy birthday, man. If I could get you a gift from Marvel, I would get you an adamantium skeleton, because then you wouldn't break any bones. And that's just convenient, going through life knowing that that'll never happen. Think of all like the skateboarding tricks and stuff you could do. I know you don't skateboard, but like you could take it up.
And I'll take that up a notch. I will give you, for your birthday, Captain Atom's metallic skin shell. It's called Dillistel, or Silver Shield. So you got metal on the outside, metal on the inside. Kind of makes the metal on the inside redundant, but whatever.
Happy birthday, man. Really glad to have you as a patron and an executive producer. But guys, we want to remind you to tune into the shows in the Dynamite Podcast Network this week, including Max Destruction, which pits your favorite action heroes from film and television against each other. This week, hosts Ken and Scotty will find out who'd win in a fight between Johnny from Surf Ninjas and Colt from 3 Ninjas. We got it wrong last week. Last week's episode was a review of the movie Dread.
On the Sinjo World podcast, host Zachary Hepburn speculates on fights between fan-favorite anime characters. This Thursday, we'll find out who would win in a fight between Noelle Silva from Black Clover and Juvia Loxer from Fairy Tail.
And on the Console Combat podcast, hosts John and Dean find out who would win in fights between popular video game characters.
Visit dynamicpodcasts.com or click on the link in our show notes to listen to all of the shows in the Dynamite Podcast Network.
But with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize. A No Prize is an award Marvel used to give out to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award we post on Instagram for the person that we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week.
Last week's question was, what was your favorite character from the X-Men 90s cartoon besides Wolverine, and why? And that question is coming off of the trailer that we got a couple weeks ago for X-Men 97. We got 2 answers for this week's no prize question. So let's go ahead and run down our honorable mention and the no prize winner.
Our first honorable mention goes to DK, who said,
Hey guys, DK here. So one of my favorite characters besides Wolverine in the animated series is going to be Nightcrawler. He has the awesome power set of teleportation, but he also has a tragic backstory that makes you feel for the character. Unlike other mutants who are able to somewhat blend in, he comes across as a demon to people due to his physical appearance, but despite all that, he still tries to help out. And he still remains one of my favorite characters to this day.
Yeah, I don't remember Nightcrawler appearing too much in the 90s X-Men cartoon. I think he appeared in a few episodes, but he was really good in those episodes. He found out that Mystique was his mother and everything. It was really touching. Nightcrawler has always been an awesome character, and it would have been nice if he was a regular on that television show.
Yeah, he was a regular on the X-Men Evolution series, which was really cool because Nightcrawler is just awesome.
Great answer, DK. That brings us to the winner of this week's No Prize, who is Travis Herndon, who said,
Hey guys, Travis here. So my pick will have to be Bishop. I think he's a pretty cool character. I love his powers, his design. I feel like he's a very underrated X-Men character. Like only like big Marvel fans will know who he is, as well as him kind of getting overshadowed by other more popular black superheroes like Storm, Luke Cage, and Miles Morales. But besides that, Bishop is my favorite.
Bishop also was not a mainstay of the X-Men 90s cartoon, but he did appear in more episodes than Nightcrawler, which is why Travis gets this week's No Prize win. Bishop was part of the quintessential storyline Days of Future Past, but the cartoon adapted it in a really great way, having Bishop come back in time instead of Kitty Pryde, who came back in time in the comics. And Bishop's just awesome. I love that character. Totally, I think, underutilized for how awesome his power set is of kinetic energy absorption. If you guys want to learn more about Nightcrawler and Bishop, be sure to check out our Duel episodes where we pit Nightcrawler against Creeper and Bishop against Hourman.
Those are some great episodes. I love those episodes. Definitely check them out if you haven't already.
You're not allowed to say that because you produced them, so yeah, you can't.
I'm patting myself on the back. Good job, Jonathan. But congrats again to Travis Herndon for winning this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on in this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week.
And now that that's done,
on to the news. Okay, Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2 is, of course, the sequel to Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1, which we just reviewed a couple of weeks ago. I really enjoyed that film. It was kind of hard to follow considering the non-linear structure of the narrative, but I thought it was kind of brilliant. And I've been really looking forward to Part 2, and this trailer did not disappoint.
No, yeah, I mean, I thought the first movie was okay. I do think it set up tremendous potential for the trilogy of films, and to see the trailer for Part 2, I was impressed as well. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be very action-packed and continue the story in an epic fashion.
Yeah, and as we predicted, with the conclusion of Part 1, the way it kind of segued towards Supergirl, it looks like this trailer will, in fact, follow her along with Batman and his relationship with some Robins, I think, from some other Earths. The trailer starts off with Psycho-Pirate, however, interacting with Doctor Strange, who's explaining to Psycho-Pirate that he has a role to play in this upcoming crisis. And I'm really curious to see how that will compare in the movie to Psycho-Pirate's role in the comics. We'll definitely have to do a Psycho-Pirate duel close to when this film comes out, which is pretty soon. They announced that the release date for this is going to be April 23rd, so just in a couple of months. Of course, like in the Crisis on Infinite Earths comic, the multiverse gets attacked by shadow demons that are under the control of the Anti-Monitor, and we don't see the Anti-Monitor in this trailer, but it looks like we do get to see perhaps the formation of him. It looks like there's a big reveal that happens that, we'll have to wait to see in the movie. But there's also some great cameos in this trailer as well. Not only do we get Batman Beyond, who we saw in the teaser for Part 2, but we also get Kamandi from the DC Showcase short, and the Doom Patrol, Blue Beetle, Peacemaker, just a massive cast of characters that I can't wait to see. Freaking Metal Men are in this. That's awesome.
Yeah, it looks like a huge cast of characters, even bigger than the first film. It was really nice to see the Dr. Fate cameo present the character as much more capable than his first appearance in Justice Society World War II.
Oh my gosh, I hated that. He sounded like Eric Cartman in that first appearance. He definitely sounds much cooler here and looks much cooler, as he should, because Dr. Fate is dope.
Robin seemed a little whiny, though. He was like yelling at Batman. He's like, "You made my adolescence suck," or something like that. I was like, okay.
You hurt my
Calm down.
feelings. No, I can't tell which Robin that is. It might be Dick Grayson from Earth 2. It might be maybe even Jason Todd from another universe. I'm curious to find out who that is as well.
Might be Damien.
It might be. You're right. Yeah, that's true. I'm really curious to find out what's going on with the Bat family because it looks like they're going to be doing a lot of shadow demon battling here.
And a lot of battling of their own demons as a family.
Exactly.
Couldn't be a metaphor for anything, right? Yeah.
Again, the movie drops late April. It's going to be released digitally and on Blu-ray, so look for it then, and we'll definitely review it on this podcast.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen the first movie yet, be sure to check that out and listen to our review on it.
But considering the multiversal nature of the story of Crisis on Infinite Earths, that brings us to our question of the week. What is your favorite universe in the Marvel or DC multiverse, and why?
Yeah, other than, the primary universe, 616 and Earth 1.
Record your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message could be up to 30 seconds long, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you on the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and award that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to Instagram. Be sure to answer before March 2nd.
But I think that does it for all the news for this episode, so let's go ahead and get into our main event, where we find out who would win in a fight between the Superman villain of Metallo and the Thor/Iron Man villain, Radioactive Man. All right, Metallo versus Radioactive Man. Again, as we said earlier, this episode will be in lead up to our Team Duel episode in a few weeks, where we pit the Legion of Doom versus the Masters of Evil, and Radioactive Man has been a prominent member of the Masters of Evil.
Yeah, when we were coming up with match ideas for Radioactive Man, I was thinking Damage would have been a good opponent for him, but our executive producers pitched Metallo, I believe, which I thought was a great choice. He's a really popular Superman villain. We haven't done a duel with him yet, and I like the whole radioactive aspect between these two characters. I don't actually know much about Radioactive Man, but of course everyone knows that Metallo has a kryptonite heart and uses its radiation to combat heroes like Superman, Batman, Doom Patrol, people like that.
I imagine he sucks when he's going up against heroes that aren't Superman. Like, against Superman, he's totally OP, and then against everyone else, like, no one gives a shit.
No, that's not the case at all.
Like, he flashes his green rock, and they're like, big whoop, and then they beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, lasers still burn. You know?
Okay, touche. To explain the methodology behind our duels, let's go to our sentient duel simulator, Alfred Jarvis 9000. AJ9K, tell our listeners how you go about determining a winner in our duel matchups.
Yes, of course, sir. The way I determine a winner between the contestants is by running 1,000 Monte Carlo simulations using the character's statistics. A Monte Carlo simulation is a probabilistic model used to determine outcomes through random sampling. In this case, I randomize the statistics along a normal distribution as a way to simulate the many variables that can occur during battle. The stat parameters are based on the official Marvel power grid, from which the DC characters' statistics are extrapolated. Additional stat categories are included, such as range, damage potential, versatility, and perception, in order to create a more detailed and accurate simulation. The results of the 1,000 simulations provide a percentage of wins for each character. The contestant with the higher percentage is declared the victor, as they have a higher probability to win any given battle. In an equitable pairing, neither character should win 100% of the matches. The comic book stories have shown that there's even a way for Batman to defeat Superman, so the confidence rate of my method falls in line with the precedents that have been established in the source material. My mathematical simulations are without subjectivity or bias. Feats are not the sole consideration. nor are fan votes tabulated for determination of the winner.
Thanks, AJ9K. Before we run the simulations, though, we like to break down each character's histories and abilities before improvising a scenario on how we imagine one of the 1000 simulations would play out beat for beat.
And I believe it's my turn to go first this episode with the Marvel character, so let me go ahead and tell you all about Radioactive Man. And it's not the Simpsons version, by the way.
Marvel, always ripping everything off.
Excuse you, obviously this version of Radioactive Man came out before the Simpsons version, so...
Agree to disagree.
And also, like, Marvel and the Simpsons have the same parent company, Disney, now, so it's all moot. They gotta sue themselves or something. Alright, Chen Lu was born in Lanzhou, China, where he grew up to become a nuclear physicist and the country's foremost authority in nuclear radiation. When China once attempted to use its military to invade India, the hero Thor stopped them, prompting the Chinese government to develop a means to stop Thor and other Western heroes like him. They consulted with military strategists and scientists for a solution, and it was Chen Lu who suggested using nuclear radiation to induce superpowers in human beings. He was so sure of his concept, having been experimenting with radioactive effects for years, that he offered himself as the first test subject. With the Chinese government's approval, Chen Lu exposed himself to massive doses of particle radiation, transforming him into the green-glowing Radioactive Man. Impressing his government with his newfound powers, they smuggled Chen Lu into New York, where he attacked Thor. During the battle, Thor learned that a sufficient physical attack against Chen Lu would cause him to erupt like an H-bomb in the middle of the city. To save New York, the hero used his hammer Mjolnir to summon a wind vortex so powerful that it sucked up and carried Chen Lu back to an area of unpopulated China, where the villain reached critical mass and exploded, seemingly dead. You can learn more about Thor in our Duel episode where we pit him against Wonder Woman. Later, however, it was revealed that Chen Lu survived and went into hiding due to his failure to defeat Thor. He was found and contacted by the villain Baron Zemo, who recruited Chen Lu into a supervillain team called the Masters of Evil. The Masters of Evil attacked the Avengers, but were defeated, Chen Lu specifically, by Iron Man, who became his new signature foe. When the robot villain Ultron formed a second iteration of the Masters of Evil, he also recruited Chen Lu, but the supervillain team again failed. Chen Lu broke out of prison and retreated to live in Vietnam, where he and the Iron Man adversaries Crimson Dynamo and Titanium Man formed their own group called the Titanic Three, champions of Eastern communism and defenders of the people. However, the pull of revenge was too strong, and Chen Lu was recruited into a third iteration of the Masters of Evil, this time led by the Ant-Man villain Egghead. Though they attempted to humiliate and disgrace Ant-Man, he ultimately foiled their plans, and the team disbanded. Chen Lu was deported back to China, where he became an agent of the Mandarin, a Chinese villain warlord that you can learn more about in his duel against Abracadabra. As a henchman for the Ten Rings, he went toe-to-toe with Iron Man, who took him to the Vault, a nuclear-powered prison that at the time was undergoing a meltdown. Iron Man convinced Chen Lu to absorb the excess radiation, which saved the prisoners and guards. He later became a henchman for Tiberius Stone, a rival of Tony Stark's who sought to discredit Stark International, the hero's corporation. You can learn more about Iron Man in his duel against Cyborg. After a string of failures, Chen Lu began experiencing fluctuations in his energy levels, realizing that his powers were tied to his well-being. He determined he had spent so much of his time working for others, be it the Chinese government, the Masters of Evil, the Mandarin, or other bureaucrats and megalomaniacs, people he secretly felt superior to, when he should just be working toward his own interests. To that end, he became a hero for the Chinese people, vowing to do a good deed for every person he had ever killed or harmed directly or indirectly through his powers. One of his heroic actions was to defend China from an attack by a group of Atlantean criminals called the Fathoms Five, where he was assisted by the latest incarnation of the Thunderbolts, which was a team of villains turned heroes. Chen Lu joined the Thunderbolts ranks and secretly irradiated one of the Fathom 5 members so that when they returned to Atlantis to stand trial, the whole group would all die from radiation. On loan from China, Chen-Lu traveled with the Thunderbolts back to New York, where they helped repel an attack by the villainous organization Hydra, and then went after heroes who refused to register with the government's Superhuman Registration Act. He was dismayed to learn that the Chinese government wanted him to stay with the Thunderbolts in America to keep him away from China due to the danger he posed. However, Chen-Lu was later forced to return to his home country when Norman Osborn took control of the Thunderbolts and didn't want him interfering with his plans to use the team for his own personal agenda. You can learn more about Norman Osborn in our Joker vs. Green Goblin duel episode. Working with China's People's Defense Force, Chen-Lu helped stop an attack from new Inhumans who were granted power by the Terrigen Mists released into Earth's atmosphere by the Inhuman King Black Bolt, whom you can learn more about in his duel against Shazam. Eventually, Chen-Lu was asked to join a new incarnation of the Thunderbolts team in New York, an invite that he accepted. And that's his backstory. Powers-wise, Radioactive Man can manipulate radioactive energies for a variety of effects, including, but not limited to, radioactive energy blasts that can incinerate a city block, intense light generation capable of causing temporary blindness, and radiation absorption. This allows him to absorb energy attacks directed against him and temporarily depower opponents whose abilities are granted by radiation, such as the Hulk or Spider-Man, by absorbing that radiation from them. His radiation can also temporarily enhance his natural physiology, granting him 9 vulnerability and increased strength, able to lift around 2 tons. He can manifest radioactive energy constructs such as force fields, tendrils, or even energy copies of himself. He can also generate low-level radiation to cause sickness and radiation poisoning within an enemy, and can also emit an electromagnetic pulse. Finally, Radioactive Man is a world scientific authority in the field of nuclear physics and radioactivity.
Yeah, too bad kryptonite is an alien xenomineral that he's not going to be able to absorb the radiation for.
Well, I'm sure he can give it his best shot.
And fail. Sounds good to me. Let me get into his opponent Metallo's backstory. Now, John Corbin was a con man who was fatally wounded in a car crash as he was fleeing a crime. His body was recovered by Professor Emmett Vale, a specialist in cybernetics who had previously intercepted and misinterpreted a message from Jor-El to his son Superman, and believed that Superman was a scout in an impending alien invasion. You can learn more about Superman in our Superman vs. Dr. Doom episode. Professor Vale transferred Corbin's brain into a robotic body made from an indestructible alloy known as Metallo, and powered by a 2-pound chunk of kryptonite, a radioactive remnant of Superman's birth planet that weakens him. Enraged by what had been done to him, Corbin killed the professor once he had completed covering the metal chassis with a foam latex sheath that resembled human skin, allowing Corbin to pass as human. Built with no purpose other than to kill Superman, Corbin adhered to his creator's wishes and fought the Man of Steel as the villain Metallo, named after the metal that composed his body. Metallo nearly killed Superman until Lex Luthor intervened, as he had realized the value in Corbin's kryptonite heart and took it for himself, shutting Corbin's body down for a time. You can learn more about Lex Luthor in his duel episode against Baron Zemo. Placed in a storage vault within LexCorp, Metallo's backup power system kicked in and he escaped, later returning to LexCorp to raid Lex's growing stash of kryptonite and to steal parts for cybernetic upgrades to his body. While seeking more cybernetic parts, Metallo found some intended for Robot Man, a member of the Doom Patrol, who you can learn more about in our Robot Man vs. Thing episode. After getting into a fight with the Doom Patrol, Metallo's body was destroyed, leaving only his head surviving intact, which Lex Luthor collected and stored inside of a crate. Eventually, Metallo was brought back to life and his head placed on a new robotic body when Brainiac secretly invaded LexCorp's computer network. Metallo agreed to work with Brainiac, who created robotic duplicates of Metallo to distract Superman, while Metallo led a robot invasion of LexCorp and Cadmus Labs. Using stolen cybernetic and cloning technology, Metallo was able to help Brainiac build himself a new body. You can learn more about Brainiac in our Brainiac vs. Ultron episode. Metallo was destroyed by Superman, however, and his head was quarantined on Stryker's Island Penitentiary. After being rebuilt and destroyed several more times, Metallo sold his soul to the demon Neuron, who in exchange gave Metallo the ability to technomorph his body like a transformer and incorporate nearby metal and machinery into his frame. Metallo was eventually defeated by the hero Steel, who tricked Metallo into absorbing a bomb into himself. You can learn more about Steel in his duel against War Machine. During Y2K, Brainiac 13 created a new body for Metallo, though Superman received help from the Metal Man, Lead, to remove Metallo's kryptonite heart once again. You can learn more about Lead in our Metal Man vs. Colossus episode. When Lex Luthor was elected President of the United States, he had Metallo transform into a colossal spaceship to take on General Zod, who had transformed Earth's sun into a red star. For his efforts in helping save the world, President Luthor pardoned Metallo for his past crimes, and Metallo was set free. When Batman and Superman went on a mission to remove all kryptonite from Earth, Batman replaced Metallo's heart with an electric battery in exchange for Metallo's kryptonite. When Superboy Prime and Alexander Luthor Jr. from Earth 3 attempted to restore DC's multiverse, reality was warped and Metallo's origin was revised so that John Corbin was a sergeant in the US Army under the command of General Sam Lane, the father of Lois Lane, whom the general was hoping would one day marry Sergeant Corbin. At the behest of the general, Corbin volunteered to don experimental exosuit armor powered by kryptonite known as Metal Zero that was developed by LexCorp to combat Superman, who the general saw as an extraterrestrial threat to humanity. The kryptonite proved to be an unstable power source, however, and after an energy surge within the suit nearly killed Corbin, Lex Luthor was forced to fuse Corbin to the suit, turning him into a kryptonite-powered cyborg. In post-Flashpoint continuity, Corbin's new origin largely remained the same, though his childhood was revealed to be traumatic as he was forced to shoot and kill his father to protect his sister Tracy. After enlisting in the army at a young age, Corbin volunteered to don an experimental suit once again, though this time it was designed by LexCorp weapons engineer John Henry Irons, who would later be known as the hero Steel. The suit, however, was taken over by Brainiac, causing Corbin's heart to burst. Powered by kryptonite and controlled by Brainiac, Irons was able to defeat this new version of Metallo by building his own power suit and uploading a virus into Metallo to stop both him and Brainiac. Metallo helped Superman defeat Brainiac, though was injured in the process and placed into a coma. To save his life, Corbin was once again fused with the suit and given a kryptonite heart to survive. Proving to be mentally unstable once he awoke, Corbin's organic body was eventually destroyed in an attempt to blow up Superman, though Brainiac uploaded a memory engram of Corbin's mind into the Metallo suit to keep him functional. After Brainiac's defeat, it was later revealed that Corbin's brain had survived, and that upon learning that Lex Luthor had framed his sister Tracy for murder, Corbin agreed to be placed in a new humanoid synthetic body, also powered by kryptonite, to do Lex Luthor's bidding. And that's Metallo's backstory. Powers-wise, Metallo's nigh-indestructible metal frame grants him super strength, and his cybernetic augmentation grants him enhanced senses and processing speed, allowing him to react, strategize, and analyze probability faster than humanly possible. Upgrades to his body have allowed him to transform his limbs into bladed, club, and projectile weapons such as chainsaws, hammers, guns, and cannons, the latter of which can shoot bullet shards of his kryptonite hearts or beams of radiation. This energy can also be projected from his eyes or from his chest when he opens panels to his kryptonite hearts for maximum exposure to its radiation. And that's Metallo.
Metallo's always been a cool Superman villain. He's probably one of my favorites. I'm really glad that we're finally getting to do a duel with him because he just has a cool look to him. But it also seems like he has a pretty interesting backstory. I mean, there are 3 different versions of the backstory, but that's DC for you.
There's also like 3 different versions of Metallo that I didn't even go into a few of the others. Like one of them was John Corbin's brother for a time who kind of took up his mantle. It was dumb and short-lived. And there's even a Metallo that predates him that's, a little bit different, but it's only spelled with 1 L. So I do agree that the look of Metallo is pretty cool. He's kind of like a T-800 Terminator, but with green glowing eyes instead of red.
Yeah, I think that's why his look appeals to me, just because of that pop culture appeal with Terminator.
Right, yeah. Now that we've got their histories and abilities out of the way, let's speculate on how one of the 1,000 simulated matches will go. The winner is determined by simulations, not this speculation, but it's fun to imagine how this fight could play out. AJ9K, what are the rules of our speculation?
Well, I should say there are no rules, other than the characters have no prior knowledge of the other going into the fight. All they are aware of starting out is that the other character is a threat that needs to be eliminated. For the speculation, the contestants will begin approximately 50 meters apart in a nondescript environment that will have no bearing on the match itself, as no environmental statistics are considered in my simulations. The contestants must earn victory on their own merit.
All right, then let's get into it. Metallo and Radioactive Man meet on the battlefield. Who goes first? I think Metallo would actually go first in this one because he's more of a soldier, right? Whereas like Radioactive Man's more of a scientist.
No, I agree. Metallo will go first, and he's going to start off with a ranged attack. He's going to transform his hand into like an energy blaster and blast Radioactive Man with a laser beam of kryptonite radiation.
That's not going to do anything because Radioactive Man's going to throw up a force field, and this energy force field just deflects the kryptonite radiation, and Radioactive Man is going to walk toward Metallo with his hand outstretched, and he's going to emit like a low-level wave of radiation that sweeps through and poisons the organic portions of Metallo's body, just causing them to decay and burn away.
Dude, the only remaining human parts of Metallo is his brain, and that thing's heavily protected and shielded in lead. So your attack, like, literally does nothing but make Metallo look cooler now that Radioactive Man has singed off his synthetic skin. He's basically Terminator now. And now Metallo is going to respond by leaping towards Radioactive Man, and he's going to transform his arm into a chainsaw, and he's going to straight up massacre Radioactive Man.
Except Radioactive Man has enhanced durability. Like, he's bulletproof. He's highly durable.
That makes no sense. Like, why?
Well, for the same reason he has enhanced strength. It's like, not only can he emit radiation, the radiation also powers him like it would the Hulk, although not nearly to that extent.
So I guess the Hulk is a precedent. That's stupid.
Chainsaw's not going to hurt Radioactive Man for one, but I don't even think that Metallo's chainsaw is going to even reach Radioactive Man, because Radioactive Man's going to generate an energy construct of this like tendril that's just going to slap Metallo out of the air and send him crashing to the ground. At which point, Radioactive Man is going to superheat the floor beneath Metallo into this like green glowing goo, and Metallo is just going to slowly sink into it until he's fully submerged, except for like his hand, and he just gives a thumbs up as he slowly sinks into the radioactive pool.
That's great. I always just want to leave it there. But no, Metallo's not out. A few moments later, the ground's going to be rumbling beneath Radioactive Man as Metallo drills his way out of the ground into Radioactive Man, who he was able to track underground due to Radioactive Man's heat signature.
Okay, so Metallo bursts from the ground and drills into Radioactive Man, or rather who he thought was Radioactive Man, because it was really just a radioactive duplicate. And as Metallo drills into this radioactive copy, it's going to explode in a flash of light that just blinds Metallo, leaving him open for attack.
He has no eyes, or like, none that will be affected like human eyes, since he can see on multiple wavelengths.
That's right. What I meant to say is that the radioactive duplicate exploded like a small nuclear bomb and just vaporized Metallo.
But the Metallo alloy is durable enough to withstand a nuclear blast, so Metallo's just walking through the fallout like a badass, just scanning for the real Radioactive Man.
Okay, and when he spots him, his systems are just going to shut down because Radioactive Man at that point unleashes an EMP blast that renders Metallo inert. So he's done, match over.
No. I mean, because Metallo still has his kryptonite power source. So, that'll just trigger his backup systems that get him back up and running in like no time. And at that point, Metallo's going to catch Radioactive Man off guard because he thought he was, shut down. and he's going to fire this massive blast from his open chest panel, along with beams from his energy cannon arms and eye blasts, just overloading Radioactive Man with kryptonite radiation, and that's going to cause him to self-detonate, just explode. And
Radioactive Man does not overload, okay? There's no limit to the amount of energy that he can absorb.
There is with kryptonite radiation.
Oh, really? Why?
Because it's an exotic form of radiation that's probably not even on the electromagnetic spectrum.
Why?
Because I said.
You're just making shit up now. I say Radioactive Man absorbs Metallo's energy attack, and not only that, but Radioactive Man also absorbs all of the energy from Metallo's kryptonite heart, which is going to depower him, and that's how Radioactive Man wins. But we can leave it there. So in one scenario,
I don't want to.
Radioactive Man absorbs the radiation from Metallo's kryptonite heart, depowering him, and in the other scenario, Metallo overloads Radioactive Man with kryptonite energy, causing him to explode. We'll go ahead and input the stats and run the simulations on this matchup and come back with a winner.
AG9K, hit it.
Inputting data, running calculations, processing results, simulations complete.
So this was a really interesting matchup. I know that when we went into it, we weren't entirely sure if this was going to be even or not because I didn't know much about Metallo. You didn't know much about Radioactive Man. But in inputting the stats, it was really interesting to see how the characters went back and forth. Because, like, Metallo is faster, but Radioactive Man is more evasive because of his force field shielding.
We said that they're about equally durable, and they're actually very durable. But we said that Metallo is stronger ultimately because this guy could hurl buses, and Radioactive Man, for some reason, can only lift 2 tons.
Yeah, you think he'd be stronger than that, but he's not. However, Radioactive Man's damage level is almost off the charts because he's like a nuclear bomb.
Yeah, Metallo's not quite at that level, but he is a better fighter than Radioactive Man because he has military training.
We said they have similar range, but Radioactive Man is smarter because he's a scientist, although Metallo has greater perception due to his robotic brain.
Surprisingly, they were pretty evenly matched when it came to versatility. I thought Metallo was going to have the edge here because for a lot of iterations, he's kind of like a transformer, or at least parts of him are. But really, when it came down to it, he's only working with one form of radiation, whereas Radioactive Man is kind of working with all of them. For the most part, their stats were very much like back and forth. And these guys did differ stat-wise more than I thought they would.
Yeah, the stats weren't similar, but they're still pretty even. Considering that, Jonathan, who do you think is actually going to win this?
That's a great question. I'm hoping Metallo is going to take the win. And it's kind of hard to say who our Instagram followers think is going to win, considering I put up the poll just like an hour ago before this recording. But right now it looks like Radioactive Man is in the lead at 53%. So that sucks.
Really? Makes sense to me, though.
No, it makes 0 sense to me. Metallo is way more popular than Radioactive Man.
Why is that?
Because he's in the freaking cartoons. And like Smallville and like all the Superman stuff. Metallo is a really popular Superman villain. Who the hell is Radioactive Man? I would say before listening to this episode.
Well, I mean, Radioactive Man's been in the cartoons too. He was in Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes cartoon and Avengers Assemble.
Yeah, no one watches those cartoons.
Just because you didn't.
Yeah. Like if it didn't happen in the 90s, it doesn't count.
All right, let's go ahead and get the winner for this match. AJ9K, the results, please.
Here you are, sir.
All right, the winner of the matchup between Metallo and Radioactive Man is Metallo.
Yes!
And it was really, really close. Out of the 1,000 simulated matches, Metallo won 514 matches, whereas Radioactive Man won 486. So it was 51.4% over 48.6%.
Holy crap! That is way closer than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, really no character had a massive advantage over the other. They both just had so much going for them, and basically Metallo got lucky, is what I'm thinking.
It almost kind of looks that way. I guess when it comes down to perception and fighting and speed, it really helped push Metallo over that edge.
Yeah, so however these guys fight, it seems like a majority of the wins for Metallo happened due to like hand-to-hand stuff. Which makes sense because really they can't hurt each other too much with their energy attacks.
Yeah, no, Metallo's just too protected against radiation, and Radioactive Man is too good at absorbing radiation. Though apparently not kryptonite radiation, as we've learned.
Okay. No, I think a majority of these wins happen due to physical combat. I guess that makes sense. So I'm not happy about it, but damn, do I respect the math.
Hell yeah.
That does it for this duel, guys. Let us know what you thought about the results by writing to us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Instagram, which you can find a link to in our show notes, or by visiting our website at dynamicduel.com.
And on our site, you could also find a link to our Patreon page, where you could join our Dynamic 2.0 tier and chat with us and fellow listeners, our Fantastic 4 tier, which gets you bonus content each month, our X-Force tier that makes you an executive producer of this podcast, or our newest tier that lets you join our Dynamike podcast network.
Please don't forget, guys, to rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or on our website. Our next episode is going to be a review. We're going to discuss the 2003 Ang Lee movie, Hulk.
Which I love, and I cannot wait to talk about. The film gets way too much hate.
The reason we're reviewing that film is because Absorbing Man is the primary villain of that movie, and he's also going to be on the Masters of Evil roster for the team duel in the subsequent episode. And also, like Hulk deals with gamma radiation, and both characters in this episode dealt with radiation, so it just fits. Now I think is the time to review this film.
So look forward to that. But that does it for this episode. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers Ken Johnson,
John Starosky,
Zachary Hepburn,
Dustyn Balcom,
Miggy Matanguihan,
Brandon Estergard,
Nathaniel Wagner,
Levi Yeaton,
Nick Abanto,
Austin Wesolowski,
AJ Dunkerley,
Scott Camacho,
Adam Speas,
Andrew Schunk,
and Dean Maleski for helping make this podcast possible. We'll talk to you guys next week. Up and away!
True believers.
Watch out, Radioactive Man.